To create a plant with alfalfa, you will need a plant factory. Go to Hierarchy, select Broccoli, then Sprout Lab Factory. This will create a Sprout Lab Factory game object. If you go to the inspector, you will see the option Open Sprout Lab window. Click here to open the Sprout Lab Editor. I will place this next to my inspector. Here you have two options, the branch collection from template, which is the default, and the alfalfa plant collection from template. I will select this option. Here the plants catalog gets displayed. These are templates you can use to start working on your project. I will select the daisy template. This will ask if you want to load the sprout template. Click yes. I will use this template to show you the options available to customize it and create your own plants. At the Sprout Lab Editor window header, you have information about the broccoli and alfalfa version you're using and the render pipeline that has been detected by the editor. Then you have options to modify the geometry of the plant you have selected. Generate new structure iterates throughout the options for this plant, generating new variations. Regenerate current just regenerates the current geometry, and load from template is the option that we have already seen to display the catalog. At the bottom of the canvas you have the lighting button. Here you can select the direction of the light to better preview your creation. Then you have the lot levels buttons to see how the geometry changes throughout the lot's levels. Next we have the snapshot list, which contains the building blocks for your plants. Then is the variation list, which are the plants themselves. You can select any plant in your collection. Selecting a plant means that you are going to work on its structures or properties. You can also select snapshots from the snapshot list. Next, I will explain the snapshots. These are the building blocks. You can select any snapshot you want in the collection. These are going to be included in your plans. When selecting a snapshot, you will see it on the canvas. You have the option to clone it, to add a new snapshot. You have different kinds of snapshots available. In this case, we will see them later. You have additional options, which is to remove a snapshot from the list or to move the order in this list. I will select, in this case, the snapshot number 1 and clone it to work on it or modify it. I have cloned it, and you see that snapshot number 1 and snapshot number 4 are the same or have the same properties. Exploring the structure of this newly cloned snapshot, we have three kinds of structure: the stems, the sprout A, and sprout B. Stems are the branches of your snapshot. You can select how many active levels of branches you're going to have. Select between main stem, 1 level, 2 levels, or up to 3 levels. We will stick with 2 levels in this case. Below you see the option to modify each of the stem levels. On level 0 is the main stem. You can modify the length. Now this is a range selector, so you can select a maximum and a minimum value for your main stem. You can select then generate new structure, and the value for the main stem is going to take randomly from this range selector. We will stick with a narrower selection for length. If you go to the branch level number 1, you will see that you have more options substantially. you have first the frequency, which is the number of branches that are going to be spawned from the main stem. Again, this is a range selector. Each random iteration is going to take a value between the minimum and maximum of this range selector. I will stick with a lower value for this range, in between 2 or 4 branches to spawn. Then you have the spawn range. If we have this range going towards 0, we see that branches are spawned on the 0 length of the parent stem. If we go up, then the branches are spawned on the top of the parent branch. You can also modify the spawning distribution using a curve, so the values for spawned branches are not always linear, and you can have more degree of control over where to span these branches. Then we have the length at base and at top. This means how long are going to be the branches for branch level 1 at the base of the parent stem or at the top. You have as well distribution curve to control this value, and a spacing variance, which adds random values to the length to be less linear and more random. Then you have the parallel align at base, which dictates how much the children branches are going to point towards the direction of their parent, at the base or at the top of the parent branch. You can select also to point towards gravity or against it, at the base and at the top of the parent. Plane alignment, it's if we see the snapshot laterally, we will see that we can control the direction of the branches, but more towards the camera or against it. The plane alignment property is used by the level of detail system to fragment the snapshot. I will slightly modify the frequency of the branch level number 2, and as you can see on the other branch level, you have the same options to modify the geometry of the snapshot. You can always see the 3D view of the snapshot you have selected on the canvas, or select the level of detail view. As you can see on the top corner, you can see the number of triangles and vertices for the selected level of view. The levels of view are going to be used by the variation, so you can always use this view to see how exactly the snapshot are going to be used on all the variations or plants in your collection. Now, I'm going to show you how to modify the leaves of this snapshot. Go to Sprout A on the Structures panel. You will see that you have the same option we have seen on the Stems Structure panel to select the number of active levels globally on the hierarchy of this snapshot. We will stick with 2 levels. Below you see you have the option to modify each of the stem levels. Level 0, you can enable or disable leaves on this level. In this case, level 2 is the only one that has leaves enabled, but you can also disable this level and have snapshots that have no leaves at all. First, I'm going to modify the size of the leaves. Go to Size and Scale. Here you have an option to modify globally the size of the leaves for this snapshot. You can also select the scale that the leaves are going to take at the base and at the top. The base on top system take the position of the sprout, taking as reference either the hierarchy or the parent branch position to calculate the scaling that's going to be applied. You can select on the scale mode either the hierarchy, branch, or the range of the sprout to calculate its scaling. Here, for example, I'm calculating the scale based on the parent branch. As you can see, most of the scaling is applied at the base. If I select range, it's going to take the range within these sprouts are generated on the parent branch. I'll leave the branch scaling mode. Now for the alignment. Here you have two options, plane alignment and aligned randomness. These options let you control how much the leaves are going to face the x-axis. This is relevant to the level of detail system because when creating the meshes and textures, a photograph of the snapshot is taken from the x-axis. So, the more the leaves are facing towards this axis, the more the details are going to be transferred to the textures. Now, how much your leaves are going to face the x-axis also have an effect on the normal textures. So you have to find or tune towards a middle point of these values so you get enough variance on the normal textures to have better reflections on the level of details generated by your snapshot. The sprout level settings let you select the level in the hierarchy you are going to modify. You can enable or disable the generation of sprouts for any level. I will select level number 2 to show you the frequency option. This option lets you control the number of leaves that are going to be spawned at the branches of the hierarchy level number 2. The spawn range lets you control the area on the parent branch from the leaves are going to be generated. You also have the distribution mode that lets you control if you're going to generate 2 leaves per position on the parent branch or the default, which is the alternative that generates 1 sprout per position on the parent branch. The spacing variance lets you introduce some randomness to the positioning of the sprouts. Then you have the parallel and gravity alignments, which are very much how the sprouts align relative to the parent branch or to the gravity. Next, I would add sprouts of type B. For this, I will select the structures of sprouts B. As you can see, none of the levels are enabled. So I will enable level 0, which is going to generate sprouts at the stem of the snapshot, but none of them are displayed right now, and this is because if we go to textures, no textures have been assigned to the sprouts B structures. Here on the textures panel, you can select the texture you are going to apply to the stems or branches, to the sprouts A and the sprouts B. If you select one texture, you can see that you also have areas assigned to each of the leaves to take from the Atlas texture. It's important that you have an albedo and a normal texture per leaf. So what I'm going to do is to add a texture to the list and assign the albedo and the normal texture for the sprouts B. Then I'm going to assign an area for the leaves that I'm going to display. As you can see, they are already being displayed on the snapshot, but I'll have to control their size and alignment to be more attuned to my whole snapshot. The mapping panel contains options to control the look and feel of sprouts. You can select a color to apply tint to the sprouts throughout the snapshot hierarchy. The tint range lets you select how strong this tint is going to be and how it's going to be distributed. You can randomly distribute the color if you select the whole range. The color tint is being applied uniformly to all the sprouts, but you can select other distributions such as hierarchy, which means that the nearer the sprout is to the base of the snapshot, the more tint is going to be applied to it. You can also invert this distribution or select distribution based on the branch position for each leaf. As you can see, the sprouts that are at the top of the branches get more tint. You can invert again this distribution to make them more tint at the base. The variance option lets you introduce some randomness to this tint assignment. This distribution system is used by all the other options on the mapping panel. Saturation lets you control the color saturation of the leaves. Shade is used to make the leaves darker. The dissolve option helps you hide leaves based on their position in the hierarchy or the parent branch. The surface is PVR-based material properties like metallic, glossiness, and subsurface. Subsurface controls how much light is going to pass through the leaves. If you select the Sprout B mapping panel, you see that you have all the same options available to customize Sprouts B. I will apply a blue tint to the leaves of the Sprout B collection. Next, I will work with variations. This collection already contains 8 variations. I'll select variation 1 and clone it, creating variation number 8. When working with variations, if you go to the settings panel, you have the option to display your working variation in the scene. This way you can see the changes you produce on the variation in your scene settings. I will also clear this variation to start working with it. With variation number 8 clear, I'm planning to place the snapshot we have just created and get it populated over this area for the variation. For this, I need to create a units group. I'll add to the canvas a main node. This node contains all the snapshots in our collection, so I will select just snapshot number 4 to be placed by this units group. If you take a look, all the units using snapshot number 4 are placed at the center of the units group. Using the distribution radius property, I will increase the area from where these units are going to be spawned. Radius is a range property, so you can select different values each time you generate new structures to get different values from where the units are going to get spawned from. You can also select the frequency. Right now is 1 to 4, but I will increase it to better see the next properties that we're going to review. Following with the distribution, you can also control the center position of this radius. The center factor helps you control if the distribution is randomly placed in the units or the units tend to go towards the center of this radius. Most of the options used to control the geometry of units are based on this radial position. Like here, scaling, you can apply a factor to scale units at the border and at the center of this radius. Continue with orientation. You have the orientation mode, which controls the facing of each unit. In this case, the default is center to periphery. If you see each unit is facing outwards the center of the radius. This is important because some of the properties will take the facing of the unit as measure to apply geometry changes. You also have periphery to center, or to make the units face clockwise, counterclockwise, or to face to a plane on the XZ axis. I will stick to the center to periphery orientation mode to show you the next properties. With randomness, you can add random facing despite the distribution mode. Continuing with tilt. This is one of the properties that uses the faces of the units, so you can tilt towards or against the face of the unit, again at the center or at the border of the radius of distribution. You can also apply a side tilt, which is perpendicular to the facing direction of each unit. Next to the orientation is the bending panel. The bending option allows you to bend the geometry of each unit at the center and at the border. Again, this uses the facing of each unit to bend toward that direction. Next, I would like to add an additional group of units at the center of this variation to include mostly flower snapshots. So I will add a new main node, go to Snapshots, and select snapshot number 2 and number 3 that are the snapshots that contains the flowers. I will set some of the properties for these snapshots, such as the distribution, the tilt, and the bending, to give it a more random look. I will also generate new structures for this variation unit group. Something I've noticed is that sometimes units generated by the first units group are too apart, so I will reduce the radius. So we will take a look at a special kind of snapshot type, which is the panicle. This contains flowers. You can add this kind of snapshot selecting the Add Snapshot option. The snapshot contains a special structure called flowers. Here you can select different options, much alike the sprouts, but more attuned to the units or leaves that are at the top of each branch. You have the same option for flowers on the textures and the same mapping options for flowers at the crown. So I will add a little bit of pink tint to these flowers just to see how those properties are reflected on the variation number 8, which is the variation we have been working with. So with this, I'm happy already with the collections that we have, and we're going to see how to export all these variations to prefabs. As you can see, if you go to the export panel, you have listed all the prefabs that are going to be generated. You can control the name and the path for the prefabs using the prefix and the path option. You can also modify a take number so you can have different iterations over the same prefabs. You also have the option to select the size of the texture atlas that are going to be generated, as well as the pattern in pixels for that atlas. You're going to get 4 textures out of this variations collection, which are albedo, normals, extras, and subsurface. Finally, I'm going to export all these prefabs. As you can see, we have them available in your assets folder. Now I'm going to place them, take a look at them. Remember that all the 9 prefabs we have generated share the same group of textures in a single material, so you can modify them and all the changes are going to be applied to all the collection of prefabs. And with this, we conclude this tutorial on how to create plants from variation and export them as prefabs.